Don Jazzy, a name that echoes through the halls of contemporary Afrobeat history. A producer, a visionary, and arguably the most critical piece in the puzzle of modern Nigerian music. Starting from its very humble beginnings in Ajegunle to finding his way to London. And while in London, to survive, he would work odd jobs at companies like McDonald's and work as a security guard in the cold streets of London, to then co-founding More Hits Records and going on to produce some of the biggest records in the early 2000s, including the era-defining Oliver Twist, to then losing everything that he had worked for in the last 7 to 8 years. But then rising again like a phoenix, building Mavin Records from the ground up, and then going on to give us some of the biggest acts that the African continent has ever seen. Jazzy's story is one of a legend. But what if I told you that at a very crucial point, he almost made a very simple but grave mistake, one that could have cost him everything that came after that period. My name is Yemi, and this is the story of how one decision almost derailed Don Jazzy from his own legacy.
It's Don Jazzy again.
You see, in the year 2000, Michael Collins Ajeri, who is now popularly known as Jazzy, he was just another young Nigerian man hustling on the cold streets of London.
You do different other jobs that will make you survive. McDonald's, you go and work, security job, parking job. You know.
You were a security where? You were security?
Yes.
Being raised in Ajegunle, particularly within the C&S church, he was around a lot of music. He played a number of instruments, including the keyboard and the guitar. Music has always been in his veins, and that's how he was raised. I mean, here's a picture of his father with him in the studio when he was just a little boy, and this is him performing at the age of 9. After pushing his menial job also for about 3 to 6 months in London, he would later join a Nigerian band called the Solek Crew.
One day when I come back house, all my face, all my body, everywhere down white.
I don't go fit do this thing again.
I don't do again.
He joined them as an instrumentalist, and they would play in popular Nigerian spots. Essentially, they would play the covers of other famous songs by other artists. But because the band didn't have the instrumentals, Jazzy would make his own version of the instrumentals from the scratch, and so his role within the band was very important. You see, the Solek band or the Solek Crew, apparently their name was inspired by the UK's So Solid Crew. So Solid Crew were big back then, like they were big, but then the Solek brand were more underground bars, pubs, those African type events. If you had a Niger party and you didn't invite Solek to perform back then, you never do party.
While we were playing, I used to play the drums on the keyboard. Feel as if a live band is playing and the gongo is playing at the same time. It was mad.
And quickly, Jazzy was starting to make money. As a matter of fact, sometimes on a weekly basis, he would make between 500,
minimum 500, 600, sometimes 1,000, depending on how people spray money at the wedding or the party.
Just from playing instruments for this band. For a young man in his early 20s, he was okay. He was financially okay. He would even send money back home to his parents in Nigeria. But unfortunately, shortly after, everything would come down crashing. For some reason, there were issues within the Solek band, and so they had to break up. And considering that the band had broken up, Jazzy had no other place to play music, and so he was back to square one. He was broke.
At some point, the leader of the band, which was Soji, so he decided that he didn't want to do like a crew anymore. I didn't take it well at that time.
So he basically scattered you.
I would say like he scattered. Yeah.
When I don't get contract.
Yeah, there was no contract. I was upset, but
he was so broke that he would even still go back to one of the ex-Solek band members to ask him for money. But then a lifeline appeared, one that would come and quickly change everything, even though he had to make some strategic moves. And this is when Jazzy even entered a bigger league. So you guys remember back in the day, this man called Cass. Remember that song, Cass Beat? Cass at the time was also living in London. He was a DJ and an artist. Cass learned about Don Jazzy while he was with the Solek Crew. Cass Beats would introduce Don Jazzy to JJC and 419 Squad. JJC and 419 Squad, they were one of the early days Nigerian music bands that were taking over the UK by storm. They were doing shows, getting featured by the BBC. Pretty much they were building a solid reputation within the scene. And so when Cass told Don Jazzy that JJC skills, when Cass told him this man wanted to meet him, Jazzy didn't really believe it because like, bro, these guys were big at the time. Now remember that I said that Jazzy was pretty much an instrumentalist. He knew how to play different instruments, but he had never produced the beats on a computer. The closest he has ever done to computing or producing the beats together is computing it on a keyboard. And also for context, this was early 2000s. Someone who had moved from Ajegunle to the precise. Computers were not that readily accessible to everybody back then. But finally, when his big opportunity will come to meet the JJC and 419 Squad, they would invite him to a recording studio and ask him to make beats on the computer. But Omo Baba didn't know how to make beats on the computer at all.
No, I've never seen computer before. Which one are you showing me computer?
For you to produce,
Yes,
they give you piano.
I know computer for making word and writing.
And opening email.
He say I should come and make beats. Now at this point, this is not production. I'm like, yo, I used to make beats on top. Did I tell you before? I used to make beats on top piano. And I said, no, that it's okay, that he's going to teach me my way around.
And his first beat was absolute trash.
Okay, I said, okay, he put the computer on. I said, okay, give me kick, give me snare, give me hi-hat, give me bass, give me piano. That's how I began, and I made the wackest beats ever in the history of human being. I said, he said, oh, okay, no problem. Now I will get a hang of it that it happens.
But then JJC's skills obviously saw the skills and the potential in Don Jazzy, and so he decided to teach him the ropes of music production on the computer. In the building that housed the JJC and 419 studio, they had a smaller studio upstairs, and that smaller studio was more of like the lower level producers. Considering that Jazzy had messed up on his first day, they sent him to the smaller studio where he was expected to go, get some training, and maybe within 3 to 6 months he would be back in a big studio if he gets better. But to their surprise, in 1 week, Jazzy already figured out everything and he was just mashing up the beats. And this was easy for him because of his strong background in playing music. He just needed to transfer those skills and understand how to use the computer software at the time.
Like 1 week, I had already contributed to doing a song for Lama back then.
Yeah. And before he knew it, he was already producing some proper international type records, including co-producing a record for Lamar. For those who don't know, bro, Lamar was a big British singer back in the day, like in the early 2000s. In addition to that as well, Jazzy produced a soundtrack for Scooby-Doo. But unfortunately, as things were getting better with JJC and 419, again, they would have a falling out. Apparently, JJC's Q's had offered Jazzy a contract. The contract, when he received it and went through it, Don Jazzy didn't really feel like this contract was a reflection of his potential position within the company. He had seen himself more of a partner, but by the time the deal came, it wasn't reflecting a partnership. And quickly, this relationship would come to an end.
But for some reason, I felt it was a partnership. Let me fuck up. A contract was presented at some point that didn't indicate if I was some form of partner or not. Yeah. And what I was supposed to be getting from it, from what I had done in my time in the partnership, so to say, it makes sense to me.
But then, just as it looked like everything was about to end, that's where a new era was just about to start. A new era where you and I probably first heard about Don Jazzy for the first time, and that's the More Hits era.
It's Don Jazzy again. Hold it.
And so if this disappointment didn't happen, More Hits would probably never have come to us. So during the time when Don Jazzy was with the JJC and 419 Squad, there was this guy that would always just hang around the studio. At the time, he didn't really know how to sing, he didn't really know how to dance, but he always came with the right attitude, the right energy, and this guy was a vibe for days. But after parting way with JJC, you see, Don Jazzy was filled with this type of that vibe of like, bro, I need to prove something. I need to prove something to these people and to the world and to myself to show that really I'm worth it. And so when he looked on the side, he saw this guy that I've been talking about. And that guy, that's the band. And that's how Jazzy partnered with him. And because of the kind of passion that was burning within them, within 2 weeks, they produced the band's first album. The album titled No Long Tin.
No long tin. Mavin Records. It's Don Jazzy again.
This project would go on to reshape Nigerian pop music. Bro, with songs like Tongolo, Mobolo Wawa, they were not just hit songs, but they introduced to the Nigerian music market a new swag, new style of branding, and just changing the perception of how Nigerian music and visuals should tell a specific story in line with what they were really trying to communicate.
I really took that No Long Tin album very personal.
Mind you, around this time, these guys had moved back to Nigeria. They felt there was probably more chance for them to blow up in Nigeria than in London back then, and that was a very good decision. And so after they had moved back and dropped these records, taking over the airways at the time, their names would start to get popular quickly. But the problem is, they were still broke. They didn't have that much money. But that didn't make sense to many people, because you guys are fresh from London. Back in the early 2000s, how would you say you don't have money? And this is what led on to the situation where Jazzy would almost make a very big mistake. I need you to picture this. The band, the charismatic showman, walking into a club. The entire room is buzzing with excitement. The girls are screaming, the boys are dapping him up, bottles are popping left, right and center. He was a star. But then, the moment the lights went off and the party was over, reality would hit them. They barely had enough money to keep things running. No mansion, no fancy cars, no endless racks of cash like what they were portraying in their music videos. Just raw talent and a dream that they were desperately clinging to. And it wasn't just about being broke. It was the feeling of pressure. I mean, the whole industry was watching. Their friends, their family, they were waiting to see if this music thing would really work for them. And don't forget, you remember they stormed out of London to move back to Nigeria to come and make a point. And at this point, doubt was already creeping in. You know, those whispers of like, was it really worth it? Maybe we should have stayed back and not even started this whole thing in the first place. And while all of this doubt was creeping in, their bank accounts were on red. They didn't have shingbai, they don't get money. With all of this happening, Don Jazzy started to think of an escape plan. He thought to himself, if we were not making it independently as Mavin Records, why not sell this record label to a bigger company? A bigger label, I mean the biggest one at the time, Storm Records. Storm Records was the powerhouse of music back then. And back then they had some of the biggest artists. This seemed like the best solution at the time. It only made sense. Storm Records had the resources, they had the connections, they had the finances, they had the understanding and experience of running a label in Nigeria. And so Don Jazzy would approach Obiasika with a bold proposition. He was like, buy us out for 1 million naira. If you change that to dollars, that's roughly about $7,500 at the time. But today, that's barely even enough to buy a used Camry. Just imagine, one of the most influential music labels in African history. They almost sold it for an amount that wouldn't even buy decent studio equipment today. Now imagine if that deal had gone through as planned. The entire history of Afrobeats today would have been rewritten. We probably never would have gotten to meet Wande Cole, no Tiwa Savage, no Oliver Twist, and maybe the word Afrobeats would never have been formed, because you remember the word Afrobeats was formed because of how successful Oliver Twist was. You probably never would have gotten to meet Rema, no Ira Star, no Ricardo Banks, the list goes on. Kind of like the butterfly effect. It's a concept that describes how small changes can have large consequences.
I heard somewhere that you tried to sell your label to Obiasika for 1 million naira.
Yep. It is what it is.
And he didn't buy it. So why were you trying to sell it then?
That's okay. Money they come, but we need some money now at the moment. It's crazy. You see this world there.
In the mix of luck and destiny, they would get the biggest deal that they had ever seen in their entire career, and that's what changed everything. You see, just when they were on the brink of selling more hits for just 1 million naira, the band would land a massive endorsement deal, and this deal was worth 20 million naira.
Give me the code. No long time.
just said, Anna, look at this. Oh, you little children of little feet.
Literally 20 times of what they were about to sell their entire label for. And before you knew it, everything changed for them. And it's funny because even though they were very, very willing and ready to sell the label, the only reason why the deal had not gone through was because Storm Records at the time were taking their time. Maybe they were not interested, they just were not moving forward with the deal. And before you knew it, Mo Hits was back strong in the game. I remember seeing these Power Fist adverts back then, and it was just so cool. The way they put a twist to Tongolo, and like the way the band came through, you know, it was just cold, man. Little did I know that that would be the beginning of a new era in Afrobeats. This whole situation would usher in a new phase for Mo Hits, and that's when they dropped Why Me. Around 2006, 2007 thereabout, Why Me was released and the entire game changed for them. With the success of Why Me, they would quickly roll out their new album, Funk You Up. They would start to bag in awards back to back. And you guys remember that song, Mogbono Feli Feli Bia Malatoji No Gong Gong, in that record when he goes, I make 10 million in a week, are you with me? So these guys had gone to almost selling their entire record label for 1 million to one of the artists on the label making up to 10 million naira in a week. Fast forward 2012, the band and Don Jazzy again, they gave us Oliver Twist. And this song, Oliver Twist, didn't just change everything for them, but changed everything for contemporary African music on an international level. This was the first proper global smash hit of our generation. And before you knew it, Kanye West came in. Unfortunately, this would be a moment that would cause arguably the biggest breakup in Afrobeats history. It turns out that as these two grew bigger and had become, very much more successful, they started to have different vision. And that's part of what led to the split up of Mo Hits Records. If there's one thing that you learn about Don Jazzy's history is that he never stays down. From the ashes of Mo Hits, he built something even bigger. He built Mavin Records. And Mavin Records would give us the next generation and also the generation after them. The ones that would even take the sound, the vision, the visuals, the style, the brand, they took it to a whole different level. You see, today, Mavin Records is not just a label, it's an institution, a global powerhouse for shaping African sounds. Thank you for joining me again. My name is Yemi Oladapo. I make videos about the contemporary African creative scene. Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe. Till next time, guys. Peace.